share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify, call out bias, and be okay with ambiguity. All right, so the agenda today is it's a pretty simple one, also maybe a hard one, but we'll be going over a couple updates to share, but the meat of the agenda will be to draft and our PCCEP's recommendation for the Portland Street response and the input that we received from community over the last couple months. So we're going to review that and hopefully vote on it today, and that is the goal. And then, of course, we will have public comment at the end before we vote, as that is very important to get. All right, so moving on to updates. There's just a couple going on. Many of you might have seen in the news that the city has selected an independent monitor. They will be, it's Mark P. Smith and Associates, and Monitor Antoinette Edwards from MPS and Associates. So they'll be voting, so the city council will be voting on accepting the procurement report, naming MPS and Associates as the selected candidate for the independent monitor, and that'll happen on May 2nd. So if you have any thoughts on that, please attend that council meeting. But just a reminder, PCCEP did have a representative on that search and interview list, so PCCEP is excited that the city is moving forward. And then the next step will be for the DOJ and the city to appoint them at the May 15th status hearing in front of Judge Simon. And again, a reminder, the independent monitor will be solely responsible for monitoring and reporting to the court and the community on the city's compliance with the settlement agreement between the U.S., the Department of Justice, and the city. So this is a major change for the settlement, and PCCEP is supportive of the change. So wanted to share that update if you hadn't seen it in the news. Next update, which just kind of came across our table today, Chief Day announces some organizational changes at PPB. And so we're kind of hoping somebody from either PPB or the city could just kind of let us know if they had any updates on that. We understand there's some promotions and assignments and reporting changes. And if anybody's available to speak on the reasoning or the impact of those changes, we'd love to give you some time at the moment. So feel free to unmute if you have any. We weren't sure who was going to come today, but we did want to just ask the question of where did those changes come from and what might be the impact of those changes.
Yeah, so I'm happy to talk about those changes. Chief Day has been here now for about 6 months, about 180 days, and his initial intent was to come in and not make a whole lot of changes, just kind of see how things were. He'd been gone for about 4 years, so he just kind of wanted to get his feet wet and get back into the bureau and figure out what's going on. Now that he's at 180 days, he's made some evaluations of the personnel he has available to him, and he wanted to make some changes and move people to positions where he thought would be more beneficial to the bureau and to the city. It's not been uncommon in the past when new chiefs have been appointed to the bureau that they've made personnel changes and kind of molded the management team in the way that they see is gonna run things the most efficiently and the best. So in terms of impacts, the only impact that we're probably going to see is he did reduce the number of assistant chiefs and the number of branches from 4 to 3. And what he did was combine the services branch, which is the Bureau's business services, things like training and personnel and records, combine that with the community services, the community services branch, which was formed when he first got here, and put all of those under Assistant Chief Chuck Lavelle. And but in doing that, he's also giving Chief Lavelle some extra support in terms of extra bodies. So he will have a captain and eventually a lieutenant in that branch to help him with the managing both the services side and the community services, community engagement kind of work that he's been doing since Chief Day got here. So I'm not sure what kind of impact that's going to have, but ideally, I think that's going to be a little bit more resources devoted to community engagement and those sorts of things. So I think that was the reasoning for that. Again, he will have some additional responsibilities, but he will also have some additional staff to help him with the community engagement work that he's been doing. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but that's kind of basically kind of what the changes are about. Chief Day couldn't be here tonight. He is actually at the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police conference in Pendleton, and I believe he was speaking either today or no, I think he was speaking today or tomorrow. So that's why he's unable to attend tonight. But yeah, like I said, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, just in the future, it would be great to understand the goals behind the promotions restructuring and what the expected outcomes should be from that, and whether from the outside we should see any difference or expect any difference, or if it's really just internal infrastructure. And I'm sorry, this is Kip speaking.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Kip. I kind of have a silly question. Is Chief Day still interim, or is he officially the chief?
No, he is officially the chief.
Okay.
That was announced last week, I believe.
Last week. Okay, so it's new. Okay.
Great. Yeah, it is very new, and that was announced.
I missed that.
Honestly, I'm not sure if they changed his contract or what that's all about, but I think, and I think part of the reason for that was, his contract was going to end next June, and I think there's some recognition of the fact that the work he's been doing and the plans he has are probably going to take longer than that, and so just to provide that continuity and that certainty, I believe was the reason for making him or removing the interim label and just calling him the chief of police.
Okay. Great. Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions for BBB? Okay. Great. We'll move on to the heart of today's agenda, which is some PSR, our Portland Street Response recommendation that we are hoping to get to the mayor's office hopefully by this week, end of this week. Our strategy has always been to, collect community input, collect a solid recommendation, and send it over to the mayor's office so that we can coincide with the budget conversation, the budget vote, so that we make sure that, I think everybody here is the support of Portland Street Response, so we want to make sure it is a supported and supported in a sustainable way. So as we know, budget season is here, and so we wanted to make sure we were kind of aligning up with that movement. So a couple things, a couple just draft review guidelines. As you were all here, some of you were here last week where we really went through and did a lot of revisions together. So where we are now is kind of a place where we have a pretty solid structure for the recommendation. And kind of like last time, what we'll do, we'll read through the entire recommendation as it is now so that we can all hear it. And, again, as last time, we want to make sure that we're really getting at the substance of the recommendation. So if there's something that can't be resolved in 5 minutes, then we're going to, put it to the side, keep going, keep reviewing the whole document, and we'll come back to it. And another reminder as we walk through this sort of more final version of the recommendation that there could be some copy edit additions still needed, maybe some structure. So we'll kind of take care of that offline. Today, we want to make sure that the recommendations that we are leaning towards, the messaging that we want in the recommendation is there, but that copy edit stuff will sort of we'll kind of take that offline. So if anybody has any questions about that, we can certainly answer to that. And again, this is kind of a work session for us. We want to get this recommendation out the door. So we will be just focusing on PCCEP conversation at the moment, but we will, of course, have public testimony comment time before we go into vote, so that we are considering all of that as usual. Any questions, PCCEP members? Okay, look at us. Okay, I'm skipping the slide. Okay. So Dory, will staff read it again for us? Okay, great.
Yep, so we're gonna start with a read through all the way through. We're gonna switch off with staff. And it's pretty long, so bear with us, but I think this will give a... It may be shorter than it was. It may be. But yeah, so yeah. All right. I will start, and then I will trade off with Samir. All right. Title, PCCEP recommendation to fund, stabilize, and expand Portland Street Response. Over the last year, the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing has heard resounding community input that the city take action to fund, stabilize, and expand Portland Street Response. Securing PSR's future is vital to the goals of the settlement agreement. Based on input from 2 town halls, numerous public meetings, and discussions with Portland first responders, city officials, and independent researchers, we recommend the following. That PSR be expanded to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That the city secure ongoing sustainable funding to support PSR's operations and its growth. That PSR be administratively housed in the Community Safety Division. That the current restrictions placed on PSR staff be revisited and revisions be considered, specifically the right to enter and provide services within buildings, the right to provide services if a weapon is present, the right to respond to calls about potential death by suicide, the right to transport individuals, the right to distribute supplies that serve street response needs. Number 5, that PSR be recused from all enforcement activities such as sweeps. And number 6, that the new independent monitor be permitted to consider success metrics of PSR when evaluating compliance with the settlement agreement. I'll go a little further here. Getting into the body. Over the last year, PCCEP provided multiple opportunities to hear input from community members and experts about Portland Street Response. We listened to firsthand accounts from Portlanders who needed a first responder for a situation that did not require an armed officer, or often may have been compromised or worsened by the presence of an armed officer. PCCEP also engaged with PPB and the PPA and was encouraged to learn that they are in full agreement about the value PSR brings to situations where police officers are not the right responders. Support for the program is clear. What's unclear is why the city has shown such apparent lack of leadership and direction for Portland Street Response. This stark contrast between community will and city inaction is underscored by PSR's relevance to the goals of the settlement agreement. Pass it to you.
PCCEP calls upon Mayor Wheeler to keep his sincere commitment to stabilize Portland Street Response and stand it up for long-term success. Sorry about that. Little scrolling issue here. We further demand that PSR be funded and expanded in a manner that meets the needs of communities represented by the settlement agreement. The recommendations below are based on input from hundreds of community members who have engaged with PCCEP over the last year to advocate for Portland Street Response. We thank Mayor Wheeler in advance for engaging with these community recommendations and taking actions to preserve this integral program. PCCEP also invites the Department of Justice to consider these recommendations as they relate to upholding the goals of the settlement agreement. Our demands are as follows. Number one, that PSR be expanded to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Quote, we need PSR 24/7 because any crisis worth addressing is even more worth addressing at 3 o'clock in the morning, end quote, from community testimony. PCCEP demands that the mayor and city council honor their commitment to fund PSR for 24/7 city coverage as soon as possible. In 2022, City Council unanimously voted in support of this expansion, but to date has not made it happen. PCCEP knows that crises happen 24/7. Sending the right responder to the right call reduces the likelihood of negative impacts, especially for vulnerable communities, including people experiencing mental illness. Furthermore, if PSR operates 24/7, additional funding sources, such as Medicaid, would become available. Number two, that the city secure ongoing sustainable funding to support PSR's operations and its growth. Quote, I work for the Department of Public Safety Standards, which is the academy for all law enforcement here in our state. I have trained thousands of police officers throughout our state on de-escalation, basic behavioral health detection. Of the thousands of police officers I have trained, every single one of them has specifically said, subquote, I wish we had somebody that could come to these behavioral health calls because we are not equipped. And when I think of the fact that we're even sitting here having a conversation about what should happen to Portland street response, there was so much excitement about this. There are people around the state who envy this. The thought that it would not be appropriately funded and expanded is pretty much beyond me. There is even more support than the folks here in this room. And quote, also from community testimony, PCCEP acknowledges that growth requires time and resources, and without appropriate level and reliable support, PSR cannot grow to the capacity Portland needs. PCCEP trusts that the city will pursue the multitude of funding options that could help stabilize and expand Portland street response, and we request a formal commitment to this action in response to this recommendation. We also request more transparency about what actions the city is taking to pursue ongoing sustainable funding in recognition of the way the city has degraded public trust in this process over the last year. Specifically, PCCEP demands transparency around efforts to achieve 24/7 capacity citywide, meet staffing needs, and provide the infrastructure PSR needs to evolve. Many community members testified that it is imperative the city secure Medicaid funding for Portland street response. PCCEP also heard support for reallocating a portion of other bureau budgets to supplement PSR funding, specifically the Portland Police Bureau budget, because an expanded PSR would be picking up more types of calls where police are not needed. PCCEP recommends that the city consider reallocating funds from PPB to PSR relative to the projected reduction of call burden on PPB. This is borne out by data. The city auditor's 2023 report on PSR says that, quote, 98.5% of PSR's responses are to calls that otherwise would be responded to by police, end quote. Researchers from Portland State University's Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative found that from April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023, PSR responded to more than 7,400 incidents and reduced PPB's annual call load by almost 4%. I'll pass it off here.
Number 3, that PSR be administratively housed in the Community Safety Division. I would see Portland Street Response as a standalone bureau side by side with fire and police response, all under the net of public safety, so that it has to work with all the other bureaus. We should be striving for a system where these are not bureaus that are opposed or fighting against each other, and that we are actually working together in a cohesive response to public safety concerns in our community. End quote. That's from community testimony. Public testimony resoundingly supported that the administration of PSR be separated from Portland Fire and Rescue and the Portland Police Bureau. Both firsthand testimony and expert analysis pointed to the fact that PSR must be independent in order to cultivate the trust needed to fulfill its mission. There was also strong community support to keep PSR housed within the city. PCCEP does not support a transfer to the county or any other external organization. PCCEP also heard testimony that Portland Fire and Rescue has been a tumultuous home for PSR, both due to cultural tensions and financial mismanagement. This has been echoed by conversations PCCEP has had with the mayor's office, PSR management, and the auditor's office. PCCEP supports the call to move Portland Street Response into the Community Safety Division, an idea that many community members mentioned. PCCEP believes the Community Safety Division is the best option to provide the stabilization and independence that PSR needs to succeed. Transferring PSR to the Community Safety Division will place PSR in an optimal position as the city transitions to a new form of government and creates a public safety service area. Under this service area, PCCEP supports the potential for PSR to have interoperability and conduct warm handoffs across first responder services, including the Portland Police Bureau, Portland Fire and Rescue, CHAT, and Project Respond, while still maintaining its administrative independence. As a part of this transition, PCCEP recommends that CSD work with all of the city's first responder programs to develop an evaluation system that tracks calls from dispatch to outcomes. This will help the city meet its goal of sending the right responder to the right call and provide the data PSR needs to grow and evolve. Number 4, that the current restrictions placed on PSR staff be revisited and revisions be considered, specifically the right to enter and provide services within buildings, the right to provide services if a weapon is present, the right to respond to calls about potential death by suicide, the right to transport individuals, the right to distribute supplies that serve street response needs. Quote, "One thing that I have noticed is that my community that I'm a part of, folks with disabilities, that a lot of the time when I have called PSR to support somebody that I know that has a specific type of disability or cognitive or intellectual developmental disability, and because they have that disability or a threat to themselves, they send out police. It is extremely difficult for folks with a dual diagnosis to get mental health support because a lot of their mental health support needs are blamed on their disability, or they're told that we can't support you because we don't understand your disability. So I think that's one area that I would love to see Portland Street Response expand on. An individual with autism was just murdered by police a couple weeks ago because he ran due to his behaviors. And I think that Portland Street Response should be the ones who respond typically to my community." End quote. That's from community testimony. PCCEP heard broad support for eliminating certain restrictions PSR currently faces in its operations. We acknowledge that making these adjustments would require a renegotiation of labor agreements across Portland's first responder system and recommend that Mayor Wheeler bring together union leadership to initiate this process. Portlanders deserve a common sense approach to dispatching the right responder to the right call, not one that is unduly impacted by the financial interests of government entities. Per point A, a number of community members testified about the potential for workarounds that would allow Portland Street Response to enter public buildings, such as apartment building lobbies or hospitals to facilitate warm handoffs. PCCEP believes this change could be made imminently. PCCEP acknowledges that the remaining points will need to be addressed in tandem with PSR's own program capacity and development. We believe there is potential for growth in these areas, such as trainings to identify whether a situation is high risk versus one PSR may be able to engage with. We also believe that improved administration of the program should quickly result in PSR being able to distribute supplies, such as Narcan and food and water. And pass it over.
Number 5, that PSR be recused from all enforcement activities such as sweeps. Quote, "What would I not support with Portland Street Response? I would not support things like rapid response and sweeping people and pushing them out. Portland Street Response is what's allowing people to have a little bit of hope that they might be able to find their way out. I was homeless for 13 years. I've been in my apartment for 2 months, and I'm grateful that they did not give up on me." End quote. That's from community testimony. PCCEP shares the community concern about Commissioner Gonzalez's recent directive to include PSR in sweeps and associated law enforcement activities. 63% of community members polled by K2 expressed disagreement when asked if PSR should provide assistance to Portland Fire and Rescue during sweeps. No matter the rationale, this creates an association between PSR and law enforcement that degrades public trust in the program, especially from the perspective of the clients PSR serves. And number 6, that the new independent monitor be permitted to consider success metrics of PSR when evaluating compliance with the settlement agreement. From the hundreds of pieces of testimony PCCEP heard, it is clear that Portland Street Response is precisely the kind of remedy that advances the goals of the settlement agreement, improves community police relationships, and creates better outcomes for Portland's most vulnerable communities. PCCEP believes a program like Portland Street Response is exactly the kind of innovation that the settlement agreement sets in motion, and thus that PSR should enjoy the protections of the agreement.
And in conclusion, PCCEP would like to thank the Mayor's Office in advance for ensuring PSR is a permanent program in our city's first response system, especially for those suffering from a mental health crisis. We thank the Department of Justice for considering our demands in light of the impact this program bears on the settlement agreement. We appreciate the many discussions that PSR, Portland Fire and Rescue, the City Auditor's Office, the PPB, and the PPA had with us about this subject. And most importantly, we thank the hundreds of community members who gave their time, knowledge, and passion to this process. As PCCEP members, we work to ensure community voice is a part of policing and public safety in Portland. Seldom does the community speak with as unanimous a voice as they have about Portland Street Response. In submitting this list of demands, we are pleased to offer Mayor Wheeler an opportunity to honor his commitments to preserving this beloved program and enacting the will of the people. Pass it to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Samir and Dory, for that story time. Okay, so we're going to go back and kind of go through the sections and kind of review them together and just make sure that it's what we want in there, if there's any changes. And again, not thinking about copy edit, just more thinking about the messaging and the facts. Yeah, that would be helpful. That way it can be part of the thinking.
Okay. So PCCEP, I think maybe saving the summary for the end like we did last time, or do you want to tackle that now?
I think saving the summary for the end makes sense because any changes that we make to the body will impact the summary.
Agreed. Okay. So we have the intro here. Did anyone have initial comments, thoughts, reactions, revisions for the intro? PCCEP members, both here and online, please, online chime in as well.
So are we just talking about the summary recommendation, that first section, like the list?
Sorry, yeah, I guess the part of the body before it gets to the 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay, just the paragraph, yeah. Anyone have any strong thoughts they want to? I thought it sounded right. It gave a good tone to start what we were going to be asking for and why. That's my input.
No issues in the body of the recommendation for me.
PCCEP members online, anything?
Byron?
I got something later on.
Okay.
I don't see anything. This is Celeste. I don't see anything right now that stands out. I'm okay with it so far.
Nathan?
Yeah, I think everything that we saw was really, really strong. The only thing I noticed, I forget exactly where it was in the document, but just before I forget, in the body of the recommendation, we clarified that we're calling for a 24/7 citywide expansion. But I think in the earlier parts, the citywide part was sort of left unsaid. And I just want to make sure that it's clear that we're not just calling for 24/7 in part of the city, but citywide.
That's a good note. Yeah, I don't think that is in the summary. Let's make that change. Good point, Nathan. While we do that, I think I'm hearing consensus about the sort of what we're calling that intro paragraph area. So I think we can consider that good to go and move on to number 1. Oh, and I guess one thing that is different from the last time is this part, well, that last sentence that Samir is highlighting, that PCCEP is, I think, deciding to refer this recommendation to the Department of Justice as well for consideration, which is just a change to note for any attendees. Okay, So let's move to number 1. And I'll just let everyone take a look at that, and then jump in with comments.
I think just adding the same edit about citywide that Nathan already mentioned.
Yeah, I really enjoy this list. I think it's a good consolidation of all the pieces we've been putting together, and it feels like concise. It feels like we're writing down what we've heard, and then I like the structure of this, that we're as Kip had suggested, just like going into the more of the detail in the body. So this list looks pretty solid to me. I know we talked about it a lot last week. That's just my thoughts.
Cool. So PCCEP members, consensus on number 1? Recommendation 1?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Just a thumbs up or?
Looks good.
Thumbs up.
All right, let's move to 2. Oh, and of course, another structural change to note. Last week, PCCEP discussed adding more community testimony throughout.
Yes, thank you.
So we ended up pulling, as you noticed in the long reading, quotes that highlighted some of these issue areas. There are many more, of course, but that's something maybe to talk about if everyone supports the inclusion of those. I think some of them could probably be edited down a bit.
Yeah,
But yeah.
I had some thoughts
Yes,
on.
I do appreciate the fact that we show, I think, a balance, and that you have somebody from DPSST speaking from a professional experience as well as community members with lived experience. And I think that presents a very compelling balance of support.
Thanks, Celeste. That's a great point. All right. Let's look at, so scrolling down from the quote here, please. Looking at the wording of number 2. Odelia?
Yeah, I think the only thing that's coming up for me is kind of it makes sense that there's vagueness around what expansion means, but I'm concerned that it comes off too much like the expansion is just the 24/7 and not beyond that. I don't know if that's coming up for anyone else, but just being a little more clear around 24/7 and furthered and continued expansion.
And where would we add that, Odelia?
Yeah, but following up on that and then getting to Celeste. Odelia, can you explain a little bit more about what you mean or provide some language potentially?
Yeah, I need to think about language a little more, but I think it would be easy to read this and say like, okay, this expansion is the expanding into the 24/7 from the hours that are now, instead of like also adding more staff and service providers on top of the expansion or the 24/7 expansion. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, Odelia. And I was raising my hand to address what they're asking you. And, it's really tempting sometimes to want to drill down and become very granular, very specific about it. But I think if we characterize it in terms of service and hours of operation, so service and operation, maybe that will allow us to have a flexible idea of expansion. But I understand your point, and I do agree. We want to make sure it's not limited to just operational hours.
Yeah, I agree.
I think what I'm hearing is, so I mean, I think the 24/7 expansion citywide carries with it like an implication of the resources that are required for that expansion, because that would be like a much bigger program. So I think the request is for more detail around that type of support beyond this sentence here that's highlighted, about to be highlighted.
Well, to support Odelia, but to also, focus on the point I was making, I'm concerned that there's a certain amount of ambiguity we have to tolerate when we're trying to define what kind of activities and scope of service there can be to allow some brand new, unimagined ideas to take place. But at the same time, I do share the concern that we don't want to give the impression that we're satisfied that it's just 24 hours and consider that the paragon of service. We want to make sure that there are other service improvements considered and implemented. And I think that goes to the heart of what you're saying, right, Odelia?
Yes. Yeah. Carrie, were you going to say something about this too?
I was thinking we could just, I think you're talking about capability. So
Capacity,
adding capability to that first sentence, PSR cannot grow to the capabilities and capacity Portland needs, or something along that lines, might address the two types of growth we're hoping will happen. Or whatever, however you want capability.
Yeah, we might wordsmith that, but those two words capture, I think, what the three of us are saying.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. This is Kip speaking, by the way. It's something that I've been struggling with also, without getting too detailed or granular, because that's where my brain goes, but still making sure that the necessary functions that need to happen for PSR to be successful are encoded in this. So I guess this might be a question for Samir and Dory. Let's assume that the mayor says, yeah, this all sounds great, let's do this. PSR moves to CSD. There's a plan to expand 24/7, grow the crews, do the training, give them the support they need to do the things like entering homes and everything else. All the specifics we have offered, does that moving to CSD imply that the planning, the resources, the goal setting, the KPIs and metrics are going to be in place to make that happen? Or do we need to have at least a general language saying that we want to make sure that we have planning and budgeting resources assigned as this move happens to make sure that this happens in a thoughtful way?
So sorry, do you want to respond to that, Dory and Samir? Because
I think I've already spoken on that. Go ahead, Leslie.
I do think that there is some infrastructure already kind of discussed there, where it says specifically demands transparency around efforts to achieve 24/7 capacity citywide, meeting staffing needs and providing the infrastructure PSR needs. So I think that's already built in a little bit here without having to go granular. And also that first sentence where it says PSR cannot grow to the capability and capacity Portland needs. I honestly think it's fine to leave it at capacity, because that I think also implies capability, because we're talking about that and then going into detail within the body of all of the things that we need to do to grow that. So I'm not too bothered by those two things.
That works for me. Yeah,
But that's a good note. Like, that's definitely something we'll keep an eye on, right?
threading the needle on it. Right?
Yeah, because I guess, and it feels like we are digging into that as we go on. Like we're layering each recommendation. It feels like, and the city's already said they want to go 24/7. So we're just making them recommit that, and then building on that, like this is what it would take. It's like moving it to this division, sustainable funding. I don't know. It feels like I guess if you're just reading that first part, those questions would come to mind, but if you kept reading
I think
it,
the
you're like, oh,
concern
there it is.
in Odelia, just correct me if you're wrong, that without having a degree of specificity, the city council already voted for them to go 24/7, and that didn't happen. So, but I think you guys are right. I think there's probably enough language in here to accommodate that. So,
I mean, yeah, it's challenging because the balance between like specificity and, well, yeah, just striking that balance, because you do need to allow for enough flexibility so that, we can get a yes here, right? Because as we all know, any large organization, certainly the government, there are so many different ways that things get figured out. And, I think day to day, the city's figuring things out. And, so I think there's a level of flexibility, or I think Celeste just put it well, saying there's a degree of ambiguity we need to carry when doing this sort of work. But I think you also kind of want to strike the balance of figuring out how to make those specific asks so you can get commitment about things like budget. And I actually think that you're doing that well here so far, and asking for permanent, stable ongoing funding, things like that, without identifying the exact source, but also calling out things like Medicaid and stuff like that. So it's a challenging balance for sure.
Yeah. Right.
I would suggest that maybe if we do want to change something around that and make it a little bit more direct, that last sentence where it says specifically PCCEP demands transparency around efforts to achieve 24/7 capacity citywide. I can see how that one, to Odelia's point, it says if it reaches 24/7 capacity, we're good. So if we say something like achieve 24/7 capacity and an expansion of services citywide, or towards the end, evolve is kind of vague. So if we say needs to expand services, those would be my two suggestions to make that more strong or stronger. Yeah. So maybe both aren't needed, expand services or expand support, something that makes it more solid than evolve.
Yeah. I think it's just like a bit of wordsmithing. Yeah. I mean, I think we have the point. It's just.
Yeah. Does that feel like it addresses kind of what you were presenting, Odelia?
Yes. Yeah, it does. I appreciate those fixes there, Leslie. I think that's good. Yeah, because I think before it just makes it seem like 24/7 is the be all end all, and it's like a little bit more than that. Yeah.
I mean, they still need to get to 24/7. Like, and it's in the chat. They're only right now from 8 to 10. So they're
For sure.
They're still like, even though they voted for it, there still is this gap that we're trying to make sure. Yeah.
Okay. And also, of course, this is the 24/7 section, so it is focused on that. Worth bearing in mind. I think maybe. Oh, sorry. No, it's not. Wait. I thought that's where we were. Have we skipped ahead?
I think we skipped ahead. No?
Oh, okay. Okay. Cool.
Oh, yeah.
We were in the
mind.
funding section.
Never mind then. Okay. Yeah. Great. So. Wait, we reviewed, we were editing this section just now. Okay. I'm getting lost. Okay, any more comments on this section?
We went down.
No, I'm fine. Thank you. This is Celeste.
I mean,
All right, do we have consensus to move on for now? And we can, of course, yeah, okay. Let's go to number 3.
Yes.
Can I say something? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it. Odelia.
I'm sure you all see my comment there, but what do other folks think about the language in this highlighted part? Like even something like I mean, obviously it is something that the city has to consider, but is that language good for other folks, or should it be like just PCEP recommends that the city reallocate funds, or like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I hear what you're saying.
Agree. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Celeste. It's always good to hear your voice. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, to a degree, I'm going to reiterate something that's uncomfortable, and that is that level of comfort with ambiguity, and as Kip said in the chat, trusting the process. You know, I know we're trying to cross T's and dot I's, but we have to allow an opportunity for the city to demonstrate the level of trust and care that we want them to, without trying to specify it with every letter, you know, and trust in the spirit of the statement and not worry about the letter of the statement. And I do understand everybody's concern, but we don't want to tie hands. We want it to be able to get agreement on this. So I'm cautioning with optimism and hope against, you know, a high level of specificity. I hope I wasn't too convoluted with that.
I hear you, Celeste. I was going to say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and, you know, we do meet with the mayor. So we've talked about the strategy of how we write this so that we get results. And something that's coming to my mind is just, is it wording it so that we do get an answer. Like, I think we do need to sort of word it so that we are tying the mayor to give us an answer. I know we got to trust the process, but I think we've been doing that as a community. And I think this letter needs to be, I would agree. I would just argue a little bit that we do need the mayor. We need the mayor to not be able to give us a non-answer. You know what I mean? Like, right? And we've had that before. This happened before with some recommendations where they were able to kind of get around it. So I'm seeing this, like, this phrase here. I actually do like Adelia's suggestion in the chat, because we're saying, like, we recommend, and again, I know there's some other chat about like recommend or demand. And I think that if we're saying we'd like to see steady increase, like, I mean, it's part of the recommendation, but.
Can I jump in here and add to that?
Yeah.
For this highlighted.
I'm not sure what beyond 24/7 staffing means, though.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Okay, yeah,
because I see what, like, I understand the inference.
Well, what if we say PCEP, we'd like to see a steady increase. Oh, where'd that section go? Like, we just kind of changed the front part of it instead of recommended.
No, I think the highlighted is.
Yeah, there it is.
The highlighted part is what you're referring to, right? Odelia?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think so.
The highlighted part is a totally different
That's why I
Yeah,
was a little confused.
thing.
yeah.
I think we're losing focus a little bit. So
Maybe I'm losing. Where we
I think
are.
Odelia was asking a question about the highlighted sentence around the wording of the reallocation of funds from PPP.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm.
I think she was asking if there's approval around the current wording, and perhaps was suggesting different wording. Is that right, Odelia?
Yeah, and then my comment in the chat was for our conversation earlier.
Oh, I see. Apologies.
Yeah. No, all good.
My bad.
Yeah. So on that note,
I think Odelia was just suggesting taking out the word consider in that sentence.
Yeah.
I think, Odelia.
Yes, yeah.
Like, let's just be stronger with that sentence. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I have the same.
My bad,
thought.
guys.
We figured it out.
This is a fun process. We all know.
Yeah, Yeah, that the city reallocate funds from
Yeah.
PB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And just to build on that, that is also direct input we had from the community. So,
All right. I think we already touched base on moving on from this section to number 3. Are we feeling good about that right now? Okay. Let's scroll down to 3. All right. This is about where PSR would live. Initial thoughts.
This is Byron. I believe that it should be in Portland. Where we got Community Safety Division. Forgive me. Community Safety. Their line of work. You have plenty testimony. Strong public testimony. I think if we trying to change anything in it, would probably be splitting hairs. I think you got enough. Remember Stephanie Howard was saying, specifically saying what you need and not try to get caught up in too many other words. And so that's my piece.
Thanks, Byron. Hearing support from Byron. Celeste?
Yes, I agree with what Byron's saying, and I want to also reiterate the point that Stephanie made. And just, from having worked in public safety and community safety with the city, this is the most flexible and apt bureau to handle this particular program. And so I'm just throwing my hat, my support also behind Community Safety Division.
Yeah, I agree. I think this has been kind of a main point that I think our original recommendation really highlighted this as the top priority. So I think it's just something we've heard for a while. I think this has been a piece, I think, where the home is. And this, I agree with Byron. This is a really strong recommendation as is currently. I think we've really nailed down kind of where, the why. And not exactly the how, because that's a hard thing for us to answer. But I think it makes the most sense in terms of like other things like Portland Street Response working in parallel to other public safety bureaus. This would be a safe place for it.
Cool. Anyone have proposed revisions? Any thoughts besides support?
The only thing I'll add is the very last line of section 3, where it says, this will help the city meet its goal of sending the right responder to the right call and provide the data PSR needs to grow and evolve, which is correct. I don't have an issue with that, but also the city's first responder system to grow and evolve as well.
I actually have one more question. So the public safety service area, that's part of the new government setup. And is that a confirmed structure, I guess?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've been following that part too much, so thank you.
It's going to be a reconfiguration of how the city is going to be managed in the new form of government. So we're going to have a city manager, which Portland doesn't currently have. And then the bureaus are going to be organized into service areas.
Okay.
And the public safety service area is one of them. So what is currently the Community Safety Division will no longer be, and it will, all of our parts will end up in some form or another under that service area.
Okay.
Along with fire and rescue, police,
Right. Okay.
all these other things.
Okay. And so there's no worry that if we're sort of committing it, we're saying Community Safety Division and that changes, that could be a loophole, of the sustainability and the homing of
Do you mean like the independence, or what do you mean by loophole?
Yeah, just that if community safety division sort of goes away because we've created this, there's this new service area. I've just seen language be used to sort of change direction of programming in our city. And so I just want to make sure we're not falling to that trap where, oh, well, that doesn't exist anymore, so we don't need to put it there. We don't have
I mean, so, PCCEP is housed in the Community Safety Division. It's not like the programs are going away because the division will no longer exist in its current form, so that wouldn't be a concern. Everything will be just reconsolidated in new ways. And then I think part of your recommendation, I think, is savvy to navigate the government transition because it links PSR administratively with an independent entity or independent from PBB and Portland Fire and Rescue. And so, we can't anticipate what's going to happen in the transition perfectly, but it might be a savvy choice to sort of, help anticipate independence in the future.
Yeah. And I think we do have that sort of covered in this paragraph. I just wanted to say that loud part out.
Yeah, just to add one thing to that, although the header, the bolded text does not refer to that, the body does talk about it being separated from any other of the existing response bureaus. Right? It specifically names fire and police, but there will be sub entities under the service area that include at minimum fire and rescue, police, emergency management, and the Bureau of Emergency Communications 911. It may include other sections too, though that not all the details have been hammered out.
Right. Yep.
Do we want to add a term like a peer organization to highlight the fact that we're demanding, I think, it's an independent organization. So just putting out a peer of the other first responders. I know we say it there, but maybe calling it out a little clearer? Or is it clear enough?
So, I think I see what you're saying. Not in that area where it's being currently typed, but both, like in that second sentence, both first-hand testimony must be independent. PSR must be independent in order to cultivate needs. So, like in that area is what you're saying.
Yeah, potentially make it a peer organization to the other first responder organizations.
Independent and, become a peer organization or something like that.
Yeah. Just to be super clear.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Samir's working on that. Anything else on this section for now? All right. Support to move on? Online and in-person PCCEP members? All right.
Yep.
Let's move on to number 4. We're making good pace, so I think we'll have additional time for public input on this, by the way. I think we're going to 4. Okay. All right, so this is about, I know we have, I think, a revision for this section. Saw some stuff in the chat, but this is about restrictions currently placed on PSR. Any initial comments, revisions, additions, etc.?
So I should note here, this is what, there was a comment in the chat about, yeah.
Yeah, there was a comment in the chat about one of those restrictions being that PSR cannot obstruct traffic. Oh,
Yeah, how do we maintain that parallel phrasing?
yeah. Right to the right to obstruct traffic. And now my internet.
Oh, Celeste, go for it.
Apologies for having missed this part, but what are the circumstances that led to this decision that PSR cannot obstruct traffic? I do see in the chat that the issue is the client obstructing traffic, and I do know that emergency responders do on occasion obstruct traffic. So I'm just trying to get up to speed here.
Does anybody here know? I do not.
Connected now.
Anyone in the meeting, online or in person?
I'll just, personal experience, a few years back, there was somebody in the middle of Thurman having a crisis, and I wound up calling Project Respond, and they had said that if the person is in the middle of the road, I need to call 911. That was the only option for it, and that's pre-PSR. So I'm assuming there's similar language.
I'm wondering if it has
But what
to
is
do
the
with,
rationale
like,
for that
perceived,
language?
Yeah,
That's what I'm looking for.
yeah. I don't know, but I wonder if it has to do with like perceived danger, and how like that's it seems like a lot of the the rationale for PSR, aside from the community, the bargaining agreement, is related to like this like danger element, like anything that's too quote unquote dangerous has to go through the police. So if somebody's like obstructing traffic, it could be dangerous. So it may have something to do with that, but that's just my.
Well, I think that's still part of the bargaining
Yeah.
agreement, right? I think that's still part.
Yeah, that would make sense if like within the bargaining agreement it made situations like that part of the police jurisdiction.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes from.
Okay.
Sarah
Okay,
Ames
that's
is
what I need
here.
to know.
Sarah Ames is here. Sarah, do you happen to know?
Yeah.
Sarah gets all of the best questions.
I know. I am sorry. I am not. I think that it is to do with safety, and that you know that they aren't designed to shut off traffic or direct traffic around somebody. They can't block off a street. But I'm not sure. I don't know. So I was not involved in these labor negotiations or the formation. So I'm sorry. I can't be more helpful.
Thanks,
So
Sarah.
I guess what I'm needing to hear then is, does this mean that PSR would be working in tandem with law enforcement to ensure that the person is not just summarily run over because PSR can't protect them? What's the protocol that, you know, is the overarching go-to here?
I think, Celeste, I'll respond by just deferring to your own wisdom, which is we probably don't know.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. I mean, you know, for it to be in here, I imagine somebody's giving it thought. But again, I just wanted to make sure that there is a plan, that they're
Right.
just not saying, well, we can't do this, so oh well.
Yeah, no, that was when we went through the exercise last week. There was some language excised from it, I believe, that talked about not only warm handoffs, which we did keep in here, but also the ability for different responders to be able to have an interoperability.
Okay,
So
thank you.
if it was
Okay.
something that required traffic to be shut down, it would make sense for police to handle that, but PSR to engage.
Gotcha. Okay, that's exactly what I needed. Thank you.
Yeah, also worth noting that this section is about restrictions being lifted, and that's it, right? So the
So
after the fact stuff is it's touched on in the description of this section, but it's really just about the recommendation is to work on lifting those restrictions.
So question to that, on the previous section, we talked about warm handoff. I think that was earlier. Maybe we add warm handoff and or interoperability. And I don't know what the right term is in first responder parlance.
The phrase is in there to have
It is.
interoperability and conduct.
Okay, never mind, then I did see it. I retract everything I just said. Sorry to wasting 2 minutes.
All right, let's go back down. So to the go ahead, Leslie.
There was a comment in the chat that I thought could be a good addition of like revisions be considered when safety allows. I don't know if we.
I would say let's go to the description part of this section. I think that might be better saved for the description. Because then if that's the case, we would probably have to add that clause to all of them. You know what I mean? Which you could do. Or you could just put it in the more general description of this section. Okay, so in my view, the when safety allows concept is touched on a bit in this last paragraph. This is the union part as well, Byron. Here, you can look at my screen.
This is Byron. I wanted to think about something with Ted Wheeler bringing together union and leadership when they're negotiating this, having both of them in the same room at the same time without it being a separate negotiation. Maybe that's something that can, I don't know if that could be put in there, or is that something that could be said? And far as, because they're gonna, I'm assuming this whole situation will be put in front of management and the union.
Sarah, all bargaining
It's separate, no?
processes are confidential. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Sarah heard me. Sarah Ames.
Yes, and again, this is not my area of expertise. I know that at times the city has had open bargaining sessions that are observable, and that the mediation process that often is hope to avoid stalemate and then arbitration deciding your bargaining agreement. Mediation is by nature incredibly confidential. So
Right.
it's, before you go to mediation, you can get a lot of work done in meetings where there are more outside observers.
Okay.
So
Thank you, Sarah.
Other comments in this section? We have the collective bargaining stuff. We have the potential safety concerns.
I just curious, for me, this is the part I feel like the mayor can give us a non-answer to, because they'll be like, oh, everything's confidential, it's agreement. And I think I had this in another messaging suggestion of like, I don't know, how do we keep the mayor honest here that they'll do this? I mean, he's leaving office soon, so I just feel like the bargaining agreement part, well, I know is like a separate, a whole separate conversation and one that PCCEP can't really be involved in, but that's like the crux to like moving other things forward, our recommendations forward, essentially, and demanding or recommending that the mayor keep us updated was a suggestion that I had made. Like, what's the tangible thing that he can give to us if he can't give us an actual answer because of bargaining agreement, but is accountable to the community of that this part is what's kind of bearing as a barrier to moving forward with expansion and stuff.
I think this is probably one of the trickier parts
Yeah.
of the recommendation, because this is a recommendation to the mayor, but the mayor is not an individual who can say yes or no to this particular thing. I think that the wording in the first paragraph or so that describes this is helpful, because I think what you could do is demand, request, recommend that he definitely enter bargaining or negotiate. He put those things on the table. The outcome would be completely. I don't think there's too much you could say that would change whatever the outcome would be.
Totally.
But that's what you could recommend in terms of what the mayor can do.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the mayor, his accountability to get back to the community without just saying, oh, I can't do anything because it's a bargaining. Like, that he's putting that conversation together, or he's,
Yeah, I think that that's a really great point, Dory, because I had the same reservation on this side, because it seems like, it can all get shot down because of the bargaining agreement, which is this whole other thing, because part of me is like, we're making these things for community safety. Why isn't community safety part of your bargaining agreement? Like, work together for community safety. Like, that is an outcome of, anyways. But the what you just said, Dory, of like, we recommend that the mayor makes this an item for negotiation in the bargaining agreement, I think makes it tangible, and they have to at least bring it up. From there, I don't know how it goes, but at least that's something that we can say, like, it has to be put on the table.
I think this updated wording might be a little more direct in that sense.
Where did you make that?
Number 4, the sort of headline request there.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because.
Sorry. We're also, I don't know that, I can't recall if we voted on it yet or not, but we're also make the recommendation for this overall recommendation to the Department of Justice as well. Correct? So I feel like hopefully Mayor Wheeler will do what he can to make things happen. And if the DOJ agrees that this is a really good recommendation, it could be part of that encouragement to solve these problems.
All right. Let's see. Okay. Are we good to move on to number 5 for now? Oh, Carrie, sorry.
That's okay. I think the new phrasing is much better. The only, can you go back to it for just a minute, where you just were? Thank you. Yes, that the mayor initiated pursuing. Yes, so when they, I think that's much more clear, and it has more accountability for sure. And I don't want to demand too much, but would we ask that we get updates or something, or is that just going to be part of the natural process?
That generally is, I think, part of the follow-up. Like, once PCCEP receives a recommendation, there's sort of a follow-up and negotiation process with the PCCEP and the co-chairs, et cetera. So, like, that's happening with a couple of recommendations right now, ongoing. So I think that's implied.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, me and Celeste, we can make sure to make that like a primary agenda item for our next meeting with, I imagine, be after the recommendation. Yeah.
All right, moving on to 5 for now, PCCEP.
Are we?
Go ahead.
I don't know if it happened already, but could we add tents to that list on the bottom?
PCCEP, do you want to add tents to that list?
I'm whatever to that suggestion. I don't know if it, yeah. I'm just
I
whatever.
think, I mean, we can definitely add it. I do think that like the such as, or something like supplies such as, you know, and whatever PSR needs, or like something that adds like, it makes it a little bit more open-ended and doesn't just restrict it. You know, I know that that was a huge point of contention when it came to like, they're handing out all this stuff that like we don't authorize type of stuff. But I do think, why not ask for them, like, you know, add something like, you know, and other things that PSR deems necessary in their course of work or something.
But
I thought we had that language in there somewhere.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, so I think we should just repeat that. And if we want to suggest tents and tarps as well, I have no issues with that. But yeah, we have earlier on as deems necessary.
Right, and I imagine if they're moved into a different division, right, like the sustainability and the expansion, I think, like that could be covered in those sort of those conversations. We can add it, but I just don't know how much meat, how much backing it gives to this full recommendation. I understand why, but it's like that happened because where it's currently at, and that's happening because of political reasons. Like, if it, well, procurement, I guess, reasons. I don't know. I just like, if we get in those details, right? Like, we're kind of getting away from. Okay, I'll stop talking.
Just add one note that the beginning of that sentence says that improved administration will lead to this ability. So just no, yeah, okay. Are you asking for it to be added as sheltering supplies or as tents?
Actually, you're right. The wording of that does make it more challenging because what we've learned from discussions with PSR and other city folks is that some of the limitations around these supplies is more related to stuff like procurement issues and abiding by city processes. Some other types of supplies might indeed be more political. So it may not fit in that sentence to add something like tents.
Yeah, but the procurement issues were more just training than anything else. If my understanding wasn't it?
I don't think we need to litigate that.
Okay.
All we know there were procurement challenges.
Sure.
That's all we need to know for the sake of this discussion. So yeah, what do you want to do here?
Maybe would we cut it off right after supplies? And I know that leaves it more vague, but maybe it gives us more wiggle room in the future.
Supplies.
Yeah, maybe
supplies allows a lot of potentiality.
I think tents bring a lot of political baggage with it. Saving lives, and with PSR's main mission is to bring people out of the woods who are not coming around. And most of the times those people already have their own place they're living, where they go to at nighttime.
Okay, sounds like I'm hearing from a majority of members that they support cutting that sentence there.
Or just saying this, just saying necessary supplies and ending it. Yeah, how you have it right here.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think moving on to number 5. And online. All right. Oh, and Sarah added something helpful in the chat to that end, by the way. Okay, so number 5, that PSR be recused from all enforcement activities such as sweeps. Initial thoughts.
I don't feel like Commissioner Gonzalez deserves to be in this recommendation. I understand what we're saying, but I just don't. I've been wanting us to get away from adding that stuff into the space, but that's my opinion. I think it just brings like this political stuff that, you know, he's trying to do to distract, right? He's trying to like, you know, and I don't want to give him space.
Yeah, I think leaving the recommendation in, but we don't have to mention him by name.
Yeah, the edit that was just made, I think that I'm very much in favor of that.
Yeah. And we heard over and over again in the town hall that PSR builds trust with the community, and heard this directly from PSR during my ride along as well.
Celeste, you had something?
My question is, does PSR and does the community want to have the option of calling in PSR if there is an acute need for it to save a life, or is the concern just avoid association with sweeps?
I understand your question, Celeste. I think that the way that this is framed means that PSR would not be a part of an organized city response around something like sweeps. If, for example, a sweep was happening and an individual called PSR, I don't believe this would preclude them from servicing that individual. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Okay. Yeah, I can support this. I'm good.
Great. Nathan?
Just one clarification. I'm not sure, like, does Portland Fire and Rescue do sweeps themselves, or do you want to make this more broad to any city bureau doing sweeps?
Yeah, good catch. I think Dan mentioned that in the chat as well. I think that might be inaccurate. Yeah, so it is it could be a number of city entities that would be doing that. So we probably just want to say something more general there.
Take it out like you did there. That feels, yeah.
Yeah, or just take it out. Yeah, that works too.
I will say, like, I would say, like, for this part, I mean, it's fine. It's fine. I like how it's written and everything, but it does feel like something that's going to be sort of handled after it's moved, after PSR's maybe moved to CSD or Community Safety Division, right? Like, they'll have their own new management and structure of, you know, I guess, like, what are we expecting the mayor to say here, I guess is what I'm thinking. Like, what, you know, okay. Is he just going to say okay, and then?
Again, it was brought up in community input,
It's true.
too.
It's true.
I think calling it out is not a bad thing to do.
It's true.
But yeah, I have no issues with the current edit.
Yeah.
Since the city transition sort of thing has come up a few times, you might want to consider adding language somewhere that says, like, we want these changes to stick around, you know, even after the city transition. I don't know, something simple.
Yeah, that was something that was excised from earlier.
Looking for the word implement.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, I was answering to that. I think we talked to it, but I don't think we call it out explicitly in this version. But the idea that it should, these intentions should exist beyond just a transition, but on an ongoing basis, and I would argue a multi-year plan to grow and make sure it's successful. So that's not just once everything transitions, depending on the makeup of the new city council, it can just be like, oh, no, we don't really like them.
Carrie?
Is there anything below this paragraph on point 5? I could flip to my own document, but.
As in, like, on
it's
point
number
5,
6.
no, that's it.
I'm thinking that, you know, the statement, the testimony is great. We're really trying to Ashley's point, what we're really trying to say is that the mission of PSR, it requires trust in the community. And I don't know that, you know, our second paragraph says that. So possibly what we could do to address that is to add a sentence just about keeping the mission of PSR autonomous from, you know, their involvement in police activities. It's not the best wording, but I think what we're trying to make sure is that in the future, wherever it's managed or held, that they're allowed to do things without degrading their relationship with the community members that they serve.
I think, kind of to Carrie's point, one of the things, we do talk about community trust, but I don't know, and I don't know that it's necessary, so maybe it's not, adding something about relationship building. That's something that we heard continuously, that like PSR does a lot of work with getting to know people before they're in crisis. So I don't know if that's worth adding anywhere in there, like degrades public trust and, you know, inhibits relationship building.
Is it stated somewhere in their mission so we don't have to be redundant?
I want to say overall, PSR is known for this. This is one of their pillars, I want to say, in a sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, if it's in their mission or if it's a pillar of their service, I think that's fine. Because again, we don't want to micromanage. We want to make sure we have very strong, broad strokes.
Yeah, I think we can easily add this language because there's agreement around what we're trying to capture, and we'll do that. We'll figure that out and add that. I'm trying to move us along a little bit because I'd want to maximize the amount of time we have to hear from community. So let's move to point 6. And this is about the essentially the monitor evaluating or, you know, taking a look at how PSR is doing relative to the goals of the settlement. And that's pretty concise there. Any thoughts on this?
Just that it's necessary. Very.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add here is like one of the biggest things that bothers me about the settlement agreement is that it's a list of prescriptions that don't have, like, that don't measure outcomes. It's just what we think will impact the crisis of like people being harmed during a police encounter. So I really like this because we have seen that it's a proven program. So sidebar, but fully support this.
Was there input from the Department of Justice on this?
Well, if we're recommending it to them, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say not yet. But
Okay.
later.
I don't know if it was like an initial thing. It says, I'm not going to say it loud, but I approve, something along those lines. Okay, thank you. I support it. I'm good.
I support it too. And maybe we could talk about this more offline, but I just also wanted to throw out there that it might be worth PCCEP getting, going to the status hearing and reading this recommendation. So I just want to make sure because that's coming up, right? So yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Does anyone want to speak to Odelia's comment in the chat?
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean, Odelia, by keeping it separate. What can you give me an example?
Yeah, I just mean we say like this is precisely the kind of remedy that advances the goals and improves community police relationships, but I think like building PSR is very separate from community police relationships. That bit just doesn't feel very relevant to this for me personally.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So for me, the way that I read this is the goals of the settlement agreement. I understand them to be that they, improve outcomes for people experiencing mental health crises during a police encounter, and then improves community police relationships, and then creates better outcomes for Portland's community. So that's how I read it, but I can see where the other reading of it makes it seem like we're not that.
Odelia, where did you get that from? What made you think of that when you were reading this?
Yeah, it's a line, second line. Right there, yeah.
So maybe we could, I don't know, amend that to be a little bit clearer. To say something like advances the goals of the settlement agreement and creates better outcomes for Portland's most vulnerable communities, thereby improving community police relationship. I don't know, but we could also take it out completely. I just notice, that would be a reason to include it.
I think another reason to use that kind of language, and yeah, maybe adding more specificity around it, like Leslie's saying, is because one of PCCEP's jobs is to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's sort of a smart thing to maybe tap into. Again, I think we can wordsmith that a bit more, but I think that's a good edit about adding more specificity there. Anything else on this before we move on to the conclusion?
No, I'm fine.
All right, let's go to the conclusion. Any thoughts on the conclusion?
There was something that Dan Handelman had mentioned earlier about consistent language with recommendations versus demands. Is that a concern now? Because I confess my brain has lost the number of recommendations and demands written in the statement.
So are we saying what we don't want to say demand?
No.
I
I'm
think
just
the
saying.
thing is just aligning. Like, are we saying demand? Are we saying recommendation? Is there a reason that it should be both, or depending on the
Well,
case?
I think that some places it is recommendations and some demands, but I just recalled what he said, and I want to make sure we use demand where we mean demand, you know, as opposed to recommendation. Because in some areas, we just want to make sure that it has the passion and emphasis that we mean. Does that make sense?
Celeste, would you think that implementing would be a replacement word for that? Implement, for this to
No,
be implemented?
I do want to say demand in
Demand,
some
okay.
areas. I was just, and maybe I've just messed up everything by throwing in
Yeah.
the remembering of Dan's statement. So we can just strike this if it's is not making the requisite sense. Just strike that I said anything because I do not wish to throw a monkey wrench in this needlessly.
Carrie?
I just suggest we make the very last sentence a bit stronger about growing the program too, not just preserving it.
Yes.
Good point. So, go ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, I guess just that point of the recommendations versus demand in the body of the recommendation, right? The second to last paragraph, it says the recommendations below are based on input from hundreds of community members who engaged with PCCEP, et cetera, and then we say our demands are as follows. So is that where people are kind of getting tripped up, that we're just not using that consistent?
Yeah, Dan.
Yes,
found the
that's
comment
exactly
where he was
it.
Like the political, that, there's
No,
concern
there-
about the political response to reading this as the advisory body, us being demanding
Yeah.
things and instead of like strongly recommending them.
Well, what it does is it seems to confuse our advocacy role with our activist role. And I want to fully embrace that we have an advisory role, if that makes sense. I really want to emphasize that we are speaking with the authority of our advisory capacity.
I put this in the chat, but just so everyone's aware, I think people have a lot of feelings about the word demand. Last time we looked at this draft, the word demand was not in here, and we got several comments from community testimony last week that we needed to use the word demand, which PCCEP supported last week. So honestly, I think the content is really the heart of this thing. And yeah, that's just what I want to say.
I think demand is a strong. I kind of go back and forth because I just think of the mayor and I think about how sensitive they can be, and I said it, and if they hear demand, right? Because we've been trying to cultivate a better relationship with them, right? And we've been working on the last year, and so part of our strategy recommendations is, we already told him that we were doing this. We already told him a couple months ago, we're doing this. We need your support. He already said, I'm into it. Tell me what we need to do. So I guess demand is like feeling like we're not being heard. And I know the community doesn't feel heard. Like we've heard that part. So it's like kind of that mix of, are we speaking? Is this our voice? I know we've added testimony.
You're absolutely right, Ashley.
Right?
This is the community's voice. So maybe we need to leave demand in if that is what the community has asked us to say, because we have to be careful to elevate their voice and not ours.
Right. So yeah. I don't either. I just wanted to. Yeah.
No, I think
say that out loud.
Reminding us, yeah.
Because it's like we want to take the community input. We want to make sure that we're, being that forum, but also, this is a working relationship. This is it, and our strategy with working with the mayor more is like, we don't want to surprise you. You know what's coming at you But yeah, I agree. This is us synthesizing the community input that we've received over the last year, and so yeah, that is what we've heard. So
Well, I guess let's ask one final question before opening it up. So we've talked about this before in past recommendations. PCCEP members, do you feel that this is the tone that you want to strike in this recommendation? Does it strike the balance between respectful, professional, and expressing the demands of the community?
I feel overall it does, but I would like one last edit before I put my name on it.
can I make a suggestion for that? The body recommendation where it says our demands are as follows. What if, and wordsmithing for sure, but our recommendations below we're brought together by demands of the community. I don't know, like we're saying because this is a recommendation, but it's based on the demands that the community wants. So I don't just kind of, it is wordsmithing. I know we didn't want to get into that, so I don't want to.
Carrie, what were you going to say?
Oh, I thought I said it before. I said I do believe that the tone is appropriate to what we feel. We've had a lot of passion about this. I also was a little bit concerned about the strength of the tone at first, but I'm very comfortable that we're representing what the community wanted and how we feel.
Got you. Sorry, I thought you had a specific edit.
What about, based on the demands of the community, our recommendation is as follows?
Variation of what it would do.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So we're keeping that professionality. We're keeping that working relationship. Like that is part of our job as PCCEP is the liaison. So, and it's hurt us before when we've, it has, right?
No, I think, and that's why it's worthwhile to talk through this to an extent. All right. So, we will potentially revisit based on what you hear next, but do we feel, PCCEP, that we're in a good place to wrap this up, your internal editing process, and hear public comment on this?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. All right. Okay, at this time, we are going to open it up to public comment on this recommendation. Yeah, and so we'll try to strike a balance between folks who are here in person and those who are with us online. Please keep your comments to under 2 minutes. Yeah, and let's get started. If you are on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand. If you're here with us in person, please raise your real hand.
And so we'll begin here in person. If there's any folks who have comments or questions that they'd like to put into the space, let me know. I'll hand you the mic.
Hi, I'll just go real fast. Hi, my name is Chris Olsen. I'm running for Portland City Council in District 2. I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you've done in this recommendation to the mayor. I really appreciate it. It is really good. I support everything that you've done here, and I'm just really disappointed that there's no other candidates here to support you guys as you're finishing this up and finishing it strong. But continue to do what you're doing. I appreciate everything that you've done, and keep up the good work. And we hope the mayor listens to you, and if I'm elected, I'll definitely be listening to you too. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Andre Miller. I use he, him pronouns. I am here in my professional capacity, actually. I'm a policy analyst and researcher for the Community Safety Division, and I am here in my professional capacity because a lot of my work actually resolves and is around building community responder programs and researching community responder programs around the country. So I work within the performance and innovation team, and I meet with several different programs on a continuous basis to learn from their successes as well as learn from their challenges that they're facing to be able to advise and implement something stronger here in the city of Portland. So I've been meeting with about 20 different responder programs, continuously gathering data on them and building out that data so we can have something that we can actually track to learn the success matrix and things that are super important and build it out for something for the city of Portland. I want to thank PCCEP for the thoughtfulness and how you all put together your recommendations. I would say that a lot of the recommendations are actually similar to what a lot of other cities are doing around the country. But I would also say that we should probably think forward thinking and think about where we would really want Portland Street Response to be, since there's no longer going to be a community safety division. So think about where it should be within that public safety service area. And also just think about the programs that are really doing good and have really high success. I would say Albuquerque, Durham, Seattle just built a program, but these programs are actually their own entity. They're their own bureau, and like somebody specified, it gives them the autonomy, it gives them the opportunity to go for those general funds in that budget, as well as be on that first level of first responder systems and first responder bureaus.
And online we have Barbara. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you. This is great. I'm glad that you brought up the issue of going forward when we get a new system of government, and I'm glad that now that I've heard Dre Miller speak, that he's working on that. So thank you.
Next, we have Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Hi, this is Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also with Portland Cop Watch, and I appreciate the willingness of PCCEP to address issues that got brought up in the chat during the meeting. So a lot of my previous comments have been addressed, and I appreciate that. I'm still a little concerned about the part about people in the street that somebody else in the chat proposed language around people in the public right-of-way instead of saying people who are obstructing traffic, because I think that that's a more broad term that can be better. You know, it will be less alarming, I think, to people reading it. And again, you rewrote the whole intro for that subsection, and I think that maybe in that intro, if you put the words, you know, when safety allows, again, it will reduce the amount of alarm that comes from the politicians who might be reading that. So those would be my suggestions on that. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness you put into how to keep the word demand in there, but still recommend as an advisory body. I think that was a very good way to incorporate that language. I thought I had another comment that if I think of it, I might raise my hand again. I appreciate all of your hard work. Thank you.
All right. Are there any comments or questions from any in-person folks? Teresa, do you have any virtual folks?
Well, I have Dan who has his hand up. Dan, did you have another comment?
No, I just forgot to lower it.
Okay, so I think so far, and community members, if more comes up for you, we probably have time to hear it as we continue. But so far, we've heard this comment about the language with the right-of-way. And then I think one of the bigger things that came up earlier as well is the bridging the city transition stuff. PCCEP heard a lot of testimony that was supportive of the idea of PSR being its own bureau or entity, whatever, in the future, in that future system. And sort of the idea of CSD, because it's going away, is sort of a bridge that might be language you want to include more explicitly, like we were saying about post-transition, what you would like to see. I think we heard that from our in-person testimony here a little bit. And then I think the other thing I wanted to circle back to was, again, same theme, but putting in some sort of clause about, we expect, demand, whatever, that these recommendations would persist post-transition, wherever you want to think about adding language like that. So one general about city transition and one more specific about the administration.
I'm not looking at the document, I'm looking at the screen, so I'm not exactly sure where it was, but I do like the idea of a thoughtful, ongoing plan beyond the city's transition. Originally, I think I used language like 5-year plan. It doesn't maybe need to be prescriptive to how many years, but something to that end.
What about just strategic plan?
Yeah, I think the 2 points work in conjunction with each other, right? That PSR become its own first responder entity on par or a peer of the other first responders, and that the mayor help develop a plan going into CSD who will help make sure it exists beyond the transition period in a supported and sustainable way. And I'm okay with that level of ambiguity, even though it makes me itchy. So.
Just wait for that to appear on my screen here. Well, that's appearing on the screen, and we can take a look at that afterwards. Jared has a hand up. Go for it, Jared.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to address one point. I appreciate all the hard work that went into this and the thoughtfulness, both in the deliberation and the crafting of what you put forward. There was a comment or maybe a back and forth earlier about the settlement agreement not requiring outcome measures or outcomes. And there is a requirement in paragraph 222 of the amended settlement agreement that will require the monitor to conduct outcome measurements. There's nothing in there specific to Portland Street Response, but I appreciate the intent and the focus of the recommendation here to require that, some specific outcome measures there. And I do want to applaud the city for its public dashboard, because we do draw on that in terms of the outcomes that Portland Street Response is obtaining, as well as their collaboration, historic collaboration with Portland State University, which has been very helpful to our compliance assessment with paragraph 115. The settlement agreement does require a fully operational crisis triage system, and the city of Portland has set that up now with Portland Street Response. So, the United States has taken the position that Portland Street Response is part of crisis triage. In terms of outcome measures, I appreciate the direction of this towards the monitor, as well as the piece directed towards the Department of Justice. If it is approved, I will certainly share it with my team and hopefully be able to report back a response. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jared. All right. I think we now have some language for the earlier suggestion. This is the specific one after the. We also recommend that after the city government transition in 2025, PSR should be a bureau under the Public Safety Service area, separate from existing public safety bureaus. Okay, and let's read the more general one. Our demand is that this recommendation's implementation continue beyond the government transition to help ensure that PSR succeeds beyond the transition. So yeah, working on that. Initial reactions. This is capturing.
I'm just curious about the term bureau. Are we still, is the thinking in the transition period that entities would still be called bureaus, or?
Yes.
Okay, all right, cool. I did not know that. All right.
I have a question along those same lines because I've been thinking about what Dre has said. And, with my years of working with the city, I'm wondering, do we need to be aware of, is there a mechanism to make this happen? Do we need to be concerned with that? Or is there going to be a mechanism to create this bureau with the new city governance system? That might be something, Samir, maybe you can answer.
I think it's really hard to answer that question because council will be determining, the current council will be determining the structure of the service areas and which bureaus fall under it. And part of that structure is determining whether or not certain things are bureaus or not.
Right. That's
and
what I was afraid of. Okay.
And I've heard of a couple potential situations in which something that, may go up or down a level, right? Add to that the confusion that some things which are not top level have the name bureau already in the way the city names things, and it's a little confusing. But yeah, that is challenging. However, there will be separate inputs into that process because council is deciding on it, and that will be a public conversation. And there have been many related conversations to this one which have been discussed at council already and will be discussed as well. So either speaking, co-chairs or somebody could speak on behalf of PCCEP in those conversations. Individual PCCEP members can certainly speak in their capacity as not only community members, but as PCCEP members on that as well. So that it's not, I guess the answer is maybe not through this document, but definitely the opportunity exists to influence that. Does that help?
So this sounds like something that we need to put on our strategic parking lot, because we need to keep our eyes open and look at how the new governance is going to be developed, so we are aware of what battles or what alliances or what relationships or collaborations we need to make to ensure that we have an opportunity to maybe have a new bureau created. That's just something to put in the parking lot, Dory.
Yeah, for sure. Among I think lots of other things through the transition, but yeah, no, it's one of them, most definitely. And I think that's one nice thing about, among many, about PCCEP recommendations is that you kind of have a built-in sort of like, monitoring of like how this thing is going and like established relationship to talk to leadership about how it's being progressed and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And for what it's worth, I've really enjoyed at the town hall. We had all those candidates, council candidates. They're all campaigning right now. But I think that's just like it's a window into what this new government will be. Like they're coming to these community meetings. Like we don't have commissioners to come now. They don't. It's like pulling teeth to get them here. So I don't know. It's just like you already see the new government sort of coming. You already see the structure of the new government like doing what we want it to do, which is having leaders show up in community spaces and be part of the conversation. So I don't know.
Dan, did you have another comment?
There.
Oh, I do. Was everybody done talking?
You're good.
Okay, thank you. This is Dan Handelman again. So I put it in the chat. using the term agency instead of bureau, and that way you don't have to worry about the city's exact how they want to categorize it. So that's just an idea. And also, you know, a rewritten sentence just appeared with the word demand coming from PCCEP, and I thought that was kind of generally the agreement that you'd be recommending and talking about the community's demand. So I don't know if somebody's going to go through the whole document and clean that all up, or if that's something you want to do before you break your end your meeting tonight. Thanks.
So one recommendation from Dan about changing bureau to agency. Thoughts about that? They could potentially have different implications. Something to consider.
Agency, entity, whatever, you know.
Well, I guess the consideration would be like bureau is like entity or agency could be like how you're recommending it be in the near future, which could be like a thing housed in another bureau. Bureau would be like bureau, right? Like, well, it's a known entity, right? And it is at a certain level of,
certain level of administrative autonomy. So we could say bureau because at this point, that's what we understand.
Anyone else have thoughts about the bureau agency distinction? Or strong preference?
As long as we have the other language about it being autonomous and a pure first responder organization, I think then that's fine. What bureau is fine then, if we want to call it that.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe we could add some sort of qualifier, independent, like bureau as defined by the structure or something like that. I don't know if we need to do that, but.
I don't think.
Or whatever. Yeah, actually, let's go with whatever.
I don't think that the idea of what a bureau is changing in any sense.
That is also my understanding, that the definition of bureau is not changing, except that there is now this additional layer of a city administrator and deputy city administrators.
I think the concern is just protecting it, and if it's going to stay the same and you're reasonably certain it's going to stay the same, then I don't see the concern. I guess the concern is, what if it does change? What does that mean?
If the definition of bureau changes?
Well, that's some heavy duty prognostication we're asking of ourselves, you know? That's some forehead wrinkles there.
Well, we have the PPB, which is the Portland Police Bureau. I don't know if they're going to change. They're going to stop being a bureau.
We're calling it a bureau, and just like I said, assuming that they will have an understanding of what bureau means based on what it has been.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
How about
I'm seeing a comment that in-person people maybe are not being diligent about their mics anymore. So be aware of that. Yeah, I think you just need to decide, are you attached to the idea of bureau or independent agency?
How about we just do an asterisk saying that where it says bureau, we do an asterisk saying, or whatever the equivalent would be called in the near future as a footnote. So, and that way we don't have to worry about it.
That's a good point.
Bureau or equivalent, I could work with that.
I think you guys are torturing yourselves a little bit.
Like I said, that's a high level of prognostication we're asking, you know? If we say bureau, let us say this high level of work for something else, like codification. We still got to do that.
Yeah, I'm okay with just keeping it as bureau, and yeah, we can only predict what we know at this time.
Yeah.
Can I, just to speak to this, if the idea that if the definition of bureau changes, the use of the word bureau would make this entire thing obsolete, that idea is equivalent to saying if they change the name of Portland Street Response, they could change everything. It's equivalent to saying if they change the name of the, there's so many things you would need to put an or equivalent to. And generally, the city reads it, I think, this is not even a good faith assumption. It doesn't require good faith even. It requires simply understanding that that was the definition of the term at the time this thing got approved. And I think if you look back at any previous recommendation from not just PCCEP, but any of the other advisory groups, they're generally read with the understanding that at the time, this term meant that. So I think this is different from something like recommend or demand, which you can, there's a meaning difference there. This is something where you're trying to perceive how terminology may change in the future and guess. And so prognosticate, as Celeste put it.
I'm very much in favor of moving on.
Okay. Yes. And I hate to do this, but I do think one last order of business we do have is back to the demand issue, because I think I need clarity as we clean this up. Demand as a verb is absolutely used throughout this. It is all over the place. So I think I'm seeking clarity about if it is important, and a noun, to PCCEP to completely eliminate that verb and noun. Or if you are comfortable with the read through. And tone. I think tone is the key here.
Dory, Odelia has her hand up if we want to address her.
Yeah.
Odelia, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think what Celeste said earlier about this makes a lot of sense, and I think Ashley brought it up too, like using the term communities demands when we say this, and like that we're always just like uplifting those, and that's so we're here to recommend the community's demands, something like that.
Quickly responding, I think there are some places where we can do that and others where we can't, just grammatically. Yeah. Celeste, do you have something?
Oh, no, Odelia captured it. I'm good. Let me get my hand down here.
I think so. So if I could get a clear answer about PCCEP's comfort with the word, it sounds like you're leaning no, because like there just grammatically we can't replace every instance of demand verb and noun with some phrasing around community. It would be super inefficient and just sound weird.
I think if we conclude with PCCEP has made this recommendation based on community demands as our final characterization of the dynamic of the word demand, we get it. I mean, that'd be a done deal. What say you, colleagues?
I think there's some instances like what is on currently on the screen where we can say considering the community's demands, and then the last sentence of and then in the last sentence demands can stay as is because it says this list of demands. I think when it says PCCEP demands, that should be changed to PCCEP recommends. Mm-hmm. But there are instances where it doesn't say PCCEP demands; it just says the demands or
So noun versus verb, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
The first two demands feel like we can add that community part, and then the next two demands feel like we need to switch it to recommendations. And I think there's one more demand at the end.
So it shows a lot in the thing on the side. It says 10, but there's actually only 5 because there's some that are removed in track changes. So there's the one that was just changed up at the top of in the way that Leslie said it. There's the one that was changed earlier in the sort of header. which replaces that one. There's this one, which has not yet been changed, but could easily be changed in the way of the previous two, the community, yeah. And same thing with this one, which you edited the rest of the sentence earlier. Then that was removed. And then down at the last two are in as nouns, and the way that would change, this is also how Leslie stated it. That.
Okay, cool. I think we have resolved that then. Any final comments before we take a vote on this? And again, the polishing, copy editing, changes that we've suggested live, we will, we'll polish that all up tomorrow and Friday.
Yeah, I motion to approve it. I don't know if we motion things, but motion to vote. Thank you. A motion to vote. Do we have a second? Do we need to do that?
I second it.
No, we don't need to do that.
Oh, we.
Okay, it looks like PCCEP is ready to take a vote on this recommendation. Celeste is jumping the gun.
So glad you're back,
So
Celeste.
PCCEP members, in person, I guess we usually do a show of hands. I guess you can voice
go down the line.
Your vote, going down the line.
Nathan and Odelia.
And
oh, they're already voting. Okay.
yeah, go ahead, PCCEP members in person.
Keep doing it, yeah.
Hold on, there it is. Okay.
I'm raising my hand and I approve this version.
Leslie Martinez also approves.
Yep. Ashley Schofield also approves.
Byron Vaughn also approves.
Tia Palafox approves.
And PCCEP members online, I see your hands. If you want to chime in too, just for ceremony, feel free.
I vote yay.
I also
thank my colleagues for all the hard work you put in capturing the community's concerns, desires, and needs.
Beautiful. All right. Well, by a unanimous vote, this recommendation passes. And we will be forwarding it to the mayor and the Department of Justice by the end of this week. So congratulations, PCCEP, and thank you again to all of the community members and people around the city and elsewhere who provided so much valuable input into this thing.
Yeah, definitely want to thank the community. You guys showed up continuously. This has been a year in the making for PCCEP, to have this voice, and it's all because of the community. So thank you. Thank you. What, me? Oh, for right now? Yeah, I'm sorry.
So, okay, at this time, we do still have time reserved for open public comment. If you have a comment that PCCEP should consider or hear that you want to share unrelated to the rest of the agenda for this meeting, please feel free to raise your hand now.
We have Dan. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you. I was trying to wait to see if anybody else was going to do it. So last week, just before you ended your meeting, I noted that there was supposed to be a vote this week about the new anti-camping ordinance that the city's proposing. They put that off. It's not going to be tomorrow anymore. It's now going to be next Wednesday at 4 p.m. So I think, in line with everything, all the work you've done about PSR, if you, even as individuals, you definitely don't have time to talk about it tonight. Want to think about communicating with City Council. The full agenda will be posted on Friday, and then you can sign up to testify. Also, just for the information, Portland Cop Watch's next newsletter will be published before the end of this month, and it should be up online by the time you have your second meeting next month. So I'll get you more about that. But if you're not already on the mailing list to get a hard copy and you want to be in touch with me, copwatch@portlandcopwatch.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Anyone else in person or online?
So just while we have the opportunity, for everyone listening at home, these recommendations do initiate a process where the mayor is required to respond. And if you have, within 60 days, and if you have a different worldview on it, or you want to support the worldview that already happened on this and other issues, I just want to take the opportunity to encourage you to apply to join this group. The application is still up and open online. You can go to portland.gov/PCCEP to find the link to it. And you can help shape recommendations like these on this issue and other issues of equal or greater importance to you that relate to policing and the settlement agreement and issues of community concern. So yeah, application's still open online. Please do take the opportunity to apply. Thanks.
All right. I think we are ready to wrap up here. And pass it over to Ashley.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Samir, for adding that. Always looking for new members. So our next meeting, we will convene on Wednesday, May 1st for the Settlement and Policy Subcommittee meeting, and that'll be via Zoom. So look out for that agenda. That should be up next week. And yes, again, thank you to PCCEP members, members of the public. I put in the chat ways you can get the link to PCCEP to get involved, and that's a good place to find out where the next meetings are, and to find past meeting agendas, and also the application to become a PCCEP member. Is that it?
All right. Great meeting, everyone. Really great work. Long time coming, and this is an incredible product. Really proud of this group. And it is 8:26 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Recording stopped.